Yo, what's going on? I appreciate everyone for tuning in this Friday night. Your boy had to push the time back because, hey, I got caught up in the kitchen trying to be Chef Boyardee, and what I was making ended up taking longer than anticipated. But anyway, we're here to talk about something that I thought was interesting, and it was actually two things. It was actually extremely smart and extremely stupid simultaneously, all at the same time. So this is going to be an interesting video where we're talking about somebody who tried to finesse the system, who tried to pull a fast one, and as as always, most times that's not always 97.9% of the time. It normally doesn't work out favorable. I'm Marcus, you're the channel, The Debt Free Dad, but we're talking finances, financial takes, attorney reactions, all of that stuff in between. I am a licensed attorney, but I'm not your attorney. So what that means is this isn't legal advice. This isn't financial advice. This is just me giving my opinion and takes and letting y'all know what we got going on over here. If you need a professional, go look one up in the yellow pages. Nobody uses yellow pages no more. The internet, go look one up in your area who could get you squared away. Always got to give that disclaimer. Keep the folks at the Bar Association happy so they stay off your boy ass. Hey, don't want to be giving unsolicited advice or opinion. So that's definitely not what this is. Now, this is going to be interesting because I saw this popped up, and the thing that attracted my attention to this story was the amount of money that got defrauded from Amazon. $9.4 million. Like, we hear schemes all the time. It's actually common to see Amazon schemes and these stories. If you just Google Amazon schemes, Amazon scams, you'll see a gazillion stories popped up. But I thought this one was interesting because I got to give this person credit. It was actually smart and thinking outside of the box. So I want to show you the first video I'm going to show you is just what the typical type of videos that you will see when someone Googles or you look at the word Amazon scam. Now, this is an older one, but this is what folks were doing normally. This is like the elementary school of scamming, in my opinion. But this gives a little bit of context to scams at Amazon, and we got to give her a little bit of credit because for the current event we talking about, she was thinking outside of the box. But this is normally what you see if you see someone finessing, stealing from Amazon, trying to pull a fast one.
Accused him of stealing more than $100,000 in merchandise.
Authorities say the merchandise came from the company's warehouses across the southeast, including right here in Metro Atlanta. Fox 5's Doug Evans has those details.
Marquise Ryans is accused of stealing more than $300,000 worth of merchandise from the Amazon distribution center right here in Newnan in Coweta County. If you've never seen one of these warehouses, they are huge. An investigator here with the Coweta County Sheriff's Office says Ryans knows how to navigate the big building, how to get in, how to get out. And while doing that, he's accused of stealing tens of thousands of dollars.
He throwing them drones in his car on camera.
Not just here in Coweta County, but also in Alabama and Mississippi.
This individual is a past employee of Amazon. He worked back there in 2020 at an Amazon distribution center. Once he's inside, he's comfortable. He starts talking to other employees. He starts talking to management. He walks in the break room. He grabs a little handheld device for one of the scanners and just starts going down each aisle of Amazon, just picking up items and putting them in the bins.
Investigators say Marquise Ryans is 28 years old.
This dude was just going shopping.
In Alabama and will eventually be extradited to Georgia. He's
Oh my God.
stealing over $100,000 worth of merchandise so far from Amazon distribution centers.
He just rolling them joints out to his car with his boy in broad daylight.
He is a suspect in similar thefts at Amazon distribution centers in Indiana, Kentucky, and Tennessee, according to authorities.
Oh my
And we're still
goodness.
getting-
But I wanted to play that video because if you do a search online for people who are stealing from Amazon, people who are scamming for Amazon, that is going to be the typical scheme that you will find. It ain't anything that's really creative. It don't take a rocket science to do it. You can tell the people doing it. If we're classifying criminals and scammers on a scale of uh, uh, when humans were amoebas to now, these are like these are not even the Neanderthals. These are like when the sea creatures first climbed out of the ocean and were able to sustain oxygen briefly. Like these are very infant stages of theft. Clearly, they're going to get caught because it's just merchandise. So that's why this story was interesting. So I want to go ahead and pull up the article because $9.4 million, it takes a little bit of effort. It takes a little bit of brains. It takes a little bit of trying to do something different to steal $9.4 million. So let's take a look at this. Mastermind of they rounded it up. They always gonna round it up. The mastermind of a $10 million Amazon fraud scheme sentenced to 16 years in federal prison. All right. Kayrika Wortham has been sentenced for stealing more than $9.4 million from Amazon while employed as a manager for the company. 7 individuals, including Wortham, have now been charged in connection with the scheme. The defendant abused her position of trust at Amazon to steal nearly $10 million from the company based on a brazen fraud scheme involving fake vendors and fictitious invoices. Creativity. Hey, when you want to go big, you can't just do it through merchandise. So, hey, at least she was trying to be smart with what she was doing, okay? Said U.S. Attorney Ryan Buchanan. She then committed new crimes while on bond, even creating a face dismissal document purporting to be from the court and that included the forged signature of Chief U.S. District Court Judge, all for the purposes of misleading a franchising company about the status of her criminal charges. Her prison sentence recognizes the magnitude of her fraud and serves to protect the integrity of our courts and justice system. Okay, now let's fast forward past the fraud because we're going to talk a little bit about the fraud and what were the stupid things that she did and why it was inevitable that she got caught. But trying to get a job, while you're out on bond, you're out on bail, trying to get a job, but you got this pending charge, fake a court record and then forges the judge's signature so that she could potentially get this job opportunity. That's crazy as hell. Like, the credit I gave her for being able to finesse $9.4 million out of Amazon for actually thinking of a scheme that would be lucrative, I got to take all of that credit back because, come on, you're trying to forge a dismissal document like somebody going to believe it when they put it up in the system. It's just still there, or like they're not going to call and follow up. So, hey, that was a kind of idiotic. But, all right. The Secret Service take cases of fraud extremely seriously, said Special Agent in charge at the U.S. Secret Service Atlanta Field Office, Stephen R. Basil. This individual stole millions from a business that employed her, exploiting not only their trust, but our nation's financial system. Thanks to the hard work of our partners, the U.S. Attorney's Office, her sentence reflects the seriousness of her crime and sends a message that this kind of fraudulent activity will not be tolerated. Now, I know a lot of people probably thinking, man, Jeff Bezos good for it. He didn't miss that $10 million. But that $10 million, y'all know who paying for that? We are. When your Amazon Prime membership goes up, or when those things that you bought that you may have not needed, but you bought anyway on Prime Day are a little bit more expensive. So, hey, I'm a proponent. Everybody like, oh, the bank's got insurance and it's just the insurance as a victimless crime. Oh, nah, you're going to pay for it. The customers are the one that pays for it. Okay. So let's figure out how she did this. According to U.S. Attorney Buchanan, the charges and other information presented in court, Kayrika Wortham abused her position at Amazon to submit more than $10 million in fictitious invoices for fake vendors, causing Amazon to pay approximately $9.4 million to Wortham and her co-conspirators. From August 2020 to March 2022, Wortham worked as an operations manager at the Amazon warehouse in Smyrna, Georgia. In her position, Wortham supervised others and acted with the authority to approve both new vendors and the payment of vendor invoices from Amazon. And that's a big point. We got to remember that because that's a big point of stupidity on Amazon's side. Yo, somebody at Amazon, if y'all watching this, y'all need to put some edits in place. But we definitely want to talk about that. Wortham, who was the leader of the scheme, provided fake vendor information to unknowing subordinates and asked them to input the information into Amazon's vendor system. Once the information was entered, Wortham approved the fake vendors, enabling them to submit invoices. Wortham and co-conspirators then submitted fictitious invoices to Amazon, falsely representing that the vendors had provided goods and services to Amazon. Wortham approved the invoices, causing Amazon to transfer millions of fraudulent proceeds to bank accounts controlled by her and her co-conspirators. Wortham conspired with others, including Brittany Hudson, in the scheme. Hudson was in a relationship with Wortham. There it goes. It always comes. Anytime I do a story or anybody do a story with a scheme or a scam or someone trying to games the systems, it never fails. These people really love their partners because they always include the partners in the fraud. Without a shadow of a doubt, they always include the partner in the fraud, which is probably a terrible move to do. One, these partners are terrible because if my wife came to me with some scheme to scam somebody, I'm gonna be like, hey, Slim, that's not a good idea. Let me see if I could call 1-800-Crime Stoppers and get a reward for turning you in. But no, it's probably not a bad idea because if you're not married and you commit a crime, there's no spousal privilege. So that person will testify against you because nobody want to go to jail. Everybody talk about they not snitching and they gonna live by the code of the streets. I've been doing this for a long time. 98% of defendants charged with crimes are giving up an affidavit. They telling they making deals and arrangements. That's just how it is. I can think of 2 individuals who I either represented or came across my desk who, when they had co-conspirators, they actually didn't say anything. They didn't take a plea agreement. They just ate their charges. They got the max, of course, because that's what happens when you don't make an agreement. You get the max. But those are the only 2 individuals out of the thousands that have come across my desk in some form or fashion doing this game. Only 2 out of thousands. So people are telling. So your partner will tell on you. It's just inevitable. And there's no spousal privilege because you're not married. Okay, Hudson was in a relationship with Wortham and owned a business, Legend Express LLC, that contracted with Amazon to deliver packages to customers. Hudson allegedly worked with Wortham to submit millions in fictitious invoices for fake vendors to Amazon. Wortham and Hudson purchased expensive real estate, luxury cars, including a nearly $1 million home, a 2019 Lamborghini, and a 2021 Dodge Durango, a 2022 Tesla Model X, a 2018 Porsche Panamera, a Kawasaki XZ636, which is a cool bike, all with fraudulent proceeds from Amazon. Now, let's talk about this, okay? At some point, Brittany Hudson isn't a stupid individual because she actually had a company, an LLC, that was engaged in a contract and legitimate business with Amazon. But this is a common trait. A lot of times, very rarely can a person get away with a scheme of this magnitude without having some help, without having someone to approve something, someone to put something in the system, because most people don't have access to every step in the process to finesse the system. But hey, Brittany Hudson had to be smart because she created a company. She had a contract with Amazon. She was delivering goods. I don't know if I don't know how this came into fruition, but at some point, hey, Miss Wortham came up with this idea. And there's where we got to get into the stupidness. Because one, the more people you have, the higher likelihood and chances that you're going to get caught, because the minute one person has a conversation, they're going to tell everybody. But number two, I took a look to see what middle level management at a warehouse makes at Amazon, because I wanted to know. I was like, I wonder, were they making enough to survive? And it varied online. It's hard to get the true numbers. You can see some rates in the 60,000, some rates were in the 80s and 90,000. It all depends on your years of experience, but it was definitely somewhere between $69,000 to at least $95,000 was what I saw generally online. So with that salary, she went out and purchased $1 million home, a Lambo, a Durango, a Tesla Model X, a Porsche, and a 636 Ninja, which is a really cool bike. Like, she went out and purchased all of that stuff. Like, come on, bro. Nobody is going to recognize or realize this isn't. I guarantee you, I would not be shocked if she drove it to work. Like, I had this conversation with my boy early. It's a strong possibility, very strong possibility, that she might have literally drove these vehicles to work. That joint says mastermind. They gotta gas the culprit or the defendant up, because nobody go like, well, I don't know. I might pick up the article. I might be more inclined to pick up an article if it said a dumbass stole $10 million from Amazon. But hey, as far as theft from an Amazon warehouse on the scale of stupid ass crime to mastermind, I mean, hey, she would fall in the mastermind category. But if there's a video of her driving her Porsche or her Tesla to work, I would reduce that and downgrade that mastermind to petty crook who just got lucky. But let's go finish checking out the rest of this article real quick so we could talk about it. But she bought all of this stuff. Knowing her, she probably, it's a strong possibility, because I don't know what it is with criminals. They like to flex with strip clubs, going to the strip clubs and buying stuff. You very rarely, if ever, see someone who commits a scam, commits fraud, sit the money away, and still live their life like a normal person. That defeats the purpose of the fraud. The main point of the fraud for most people is they want to flex with their ill-gotten gains. So Wortham also recruited co-conspirators Demetrius Hines, who was in loss prevention at Amazon, Laquita Blanchard, who worked as a senior human resources assistant at the company. Hines and Blanchard provided names and social security numbers to Wortham to create additional fake vendor accounts. Blanchard provided names of relatives and associates. Come on, bro. Really? Like, some people are just the ultimate worst and like petty. But again, that's something that you commonly see. Nobody can commit a fraud for this amount by themselves. Like I said, they need players. She recruits people in HR to give fake names, fake social. And the lady at HR is giving her the names and information of her relatives to do bogus invoices and open bogus accounts. And I know y'all thinking, that sounds stupid as hell. Why would someone do that? But I literally seen a case of PPP fraud where they were just getting bogus accounts. They got names and social security numbers of inmates. They got names and social security numbers of neighbors. The defendant's father passed away, and a week later, they used his name and social security number to apply for a PPP loan to get bogus money. So, as stupid as hell, as dumb as that sounds, people do it all the time. So it's definitely something that's not uncommon for people to do. Is, I'm gonna use the name of my relative. At least in the PPP case, she had the common sense, or at least the respect, to wait till her father passed away. This lady was giving out people's names and information while they were still out here kicking. It's kind of crazy. Okay, so Hines provided stolen identification information that he purchased from Jaquan Frazier, who in turn allegedly purchased the information from Daryl Burgo, also known as Fleet. Hines and Blanchard were paid in fraudulent proceeds. Hines also recruited Jamar James Sr., another operations manager at Amazon, located in Dulles, Georgia, into the scheme. Like Wortham, James allegedly approved fake vendors and fictitious invoices, including after Wortham left Amazon in 2022. While on bond, and this is the stupidest part, this, when you're building cooking up a recipe of stupidity, it's never any good if you can't put whipped cream and a cherry on top. And so this is the whipped cream and the cherry on top of the stupidity. While on bond, Wortham and Hudson committed new criminal conduct that resulted in the revocation of their bond. In January 2023, they were working with CRU Franchising Company to open a hookah lounge in Midtown Atlanta. During the due diligence to the closing deal, CRU discovered, again, these people, as stupid as they are, they have some sense and some business acumen. The girlfriend had a legitimate business that had a contract with Amazon. You see, they're looking at branching out and doing other ventures such as a hookah lounge. So these aren't people who are unsophisticated. I actually would, on a scale of 1 to 10, I would probably give them at an 8 when it comes to sophistication level of their criminal abilities to receive and obtain ill-gotten gains. But during the closing of the deal, CRU discovered and asked about the Amazon fraud charge against them. In response, Wortham and Hudson allegedly lied to CRU, claiming that their Amazon-related criminal charges were dismissed. The two then emailed fraudulent court documents to CRU that purported to show a dismissal of the charges and contained forged signatures of Chief U.S. District Court Judge Timothy C. Batten Sr. and forged seals and signatures of the clerk of court. That's a big ass no-no, okay? Like I don't know who they think they are, but these are federal judges as federal charges, federal proceedings. That's not going. You shouldn't do that for a state judge or administrative law judge. Hell, you should not forge the judge on traffic court's signature on anything. But you're really going to get hit over the head if it's a federal judge in federal court. It says Hudson also allegedly emailed CRU doctored bank accounts and personal finance statements that fraudulently inflated the balance in her accounts to support the franchise deal. Karika Wortham, also known as Karika Dupree and Karika Young of Atlanta, Georgia, was sentenced by Judge Batten Sr. Come on now. I'm the judge and you try to forge my stuff. I'm going to throw the book at you right upside your head. But was sentenced to 16 years in prison to be followed by 3 years of supervised release in order to pay restitution to Amazon in the amount of $9.4 million, more than $2.7 million in fraudulent proceeds seized from the multiple bank accounts. The vehicles purchased with fraudulent proceeds were forfeited. Wortham was convicted of the Amazon fraud charges on November of 2022 after she pled guilty. She had been indicted for defrauding CRU and forging the signature of a federal judge at court, and those charges remain pending. Now, you know what's going to actually happen with that. Oh my goodness, this is just a compounding. This is just a compounding event. On January 20th, 2023, a federal grand jury invited Brittany Hudson, 37, Lamar James of Senior, 47, for conspiracy, wire fraud, and money laundering, and Hudson for forging the signature of a federal judge at a sale court. Daryl Burgos of Georgia was charged in the same indictment with conspiracy, access device fraud, and aggravated identity theft. Those charges are pending. For their role in the scheme, Demetrius Hines pled guilty to wire fraud conspiracy on June 27th. Laquita Brancher pled guilty to wire fraud conspiracy on June 27th as well. Frazier pled guilty to misprision of a felony. Judge Batten will sentence these three defendants at a later date. The case is being investigated by the U.S. Secret Service. Now, I know y'all thinking like, man, wow, why is the U.S. Secret Service investigating this case? I don't understand why it's a Secret Service thing. But, you know, unbeknownst to a lot of people, the U.S. Secret Service has a lot of jurisdiction. And one of the things you always see them in when it comes to like forging money, you know, they have kind of like exclusive jurisdiction. But this is just a display of people who had a little bit of intelligence, who actually had a functioning business at some point, trying to get a little bit greedy, trying to do the wrong thing, and it's just dumb as hell. Now, hey, I've been doing this attorney thing for a long time. The main name of the game is mitigate risk. I want to know what risks are out there so I can avoid them. So you should be able, as an attorney, to tell a client, tell somebody you're representing, these are some things you can do to mitigate risk, because we see some weaknesses that's going to leave you assed out, and here are ways to fix them. So let's backtrack and look at Amazon. Why in the hell were they able to really commit fraud for 2 years to amount to almost $10 million? No one should have that type of access. But Amazon had a severe process flaw that we're going to talk about. Why are people so stupid? Why would they not think that they would get caught? Yeah, they especially going to get caught when you're an Amazon manager and you buy Lamborghinis and multi-million-dollar properties and Teslas. And I'm just assuming, I guarantee you, they probably drove them to work. They probably took people from the company over to their house so they could see their balling ass mansion. So it's just stupidity compounded by stupidity with a little extra stupidity, whipped cream, and strawberry on top. But one of the first things, if you're evaluating any program for weakness, if you're a business out here, this is some free game. You're evaluating any business for weakness, places where fraud, waste, and abuse can happen. Anytime you have one individual who can control the creation of invoices, the submission of invoices, and the approval of invoices, you are going to have a problem. It's just a recipe for disaster. One person has the ability to create, to submit, and to approve for payment. It's inevitable that fraud is going to occur because one person has so much power. So essentially, anytime you go into an organization and you're looking at their processes and you're like, okay, where can we look at what y'all doing, figure out ways to reduce and mitigate fraud, waste, and abuse? That's the type of work that I and a lot of attorneys do. We just go in and look and say, okay, this is what y'all got. This is y'all process. Y'all process has a gap here, here, and here. So what are some of the things you can do? You want to split the authority up. The person who writes the invoices shouldn't be the same person who submits the invoices. And that should be someone different from the person who approves the invoices. Then there should be periodic checks when anyone writes invoices that exceed a certain amount or over a certain duration. Every 3 months, we're going to have a quality control team of independent outside people come to look at it. Why do you want to have outside people? Because think about it. What happened in this case? Everybody who was involved in this case, all of the co-conspirators, they all worked or had some nexus to Amazon. So when you have a process and you want to bring someone in to review it, to make sure everything is on the up and up, you got to go get someone from the outside, because anybody on the inside could be compromised. Now, yeah, you can use people on the inside to review and evaluate processes. And sometimes if they're doing their job, if they aren't compromised, yeah, they can actually give you valid information, valid data, corroborate the numbers to make sure everything is on the up and up. But the best way to do it is always to get an external audit done by an outside entity, because that outside entity, she's not going to go to a third party that you hired, that Amazon hired, to make sure that everything on the up and up, to try to bribe them to get in on this scheme. Nah, those people don't know her. They probably not going to want to mess up this big ass lucrative contract with Amazon. So those are the type of things that people have to do. Those are the type of things that attorneys do. You see it done all the time in hip hop. Somebody in hip hop get finessed. After they get finessed, what happens when they get finessed? They go get independent auditors to come look at the terms of their contract to say, hey, you signed a bad deal. You didn't get finessed. You just had janky terms. Yep. Incompetent folks in the accounting and internal controls departments. Exactly. You have to get outside people to come look at your stuff. If, knock on wood, DFD Inc. got so big to where I had to outsource and have a bunch of staff, and I got contractors editing videos and giving me topics, I just come in, sit down, go through stuff, and everybody else is doing stuff. No, all of those people got to get paid. I know I'm not going to have the time, and I'm not going to be going through making sure that everybody get paid because I ain't got that type of patience, especially if I'm that busy with just something like content creation. So you have to have an external person to come, make sure all the T's are crossed and make sure all the I's are dotted. Conflict of interest. Yep. Close this real quick. For such a large organization, I cannot believe that they didn't have separation of duties in this instance. It's so much money flowing through Amazon. Those people aren't really thinking about that. I mean, it's sad as I don't know what, but it's so much damn money in Amazon. They aren't thinking about it. And that's why somebody can get away with a nah. Hey, what's going on? Appreciate you joining in. It's so much money in Amazon. Like, I'm actually shocked. Like $9.4 million, you'd think that would jump out and be like, damn, $9.4 million? We should have caught this when it was at $2 million. But nah, Amazon got too much money going through. It's too much separation of powers. Every Amazon factory probably has a different process because a lot of times they probably leave it, not all, but some organizations, they may leave it up to the head of that particular facility as to how they want to do their process, how their process should go. But at the end of the day, trying to finesse the system, it never works out for anybody. It only works out for one type of criminal. It only works out for one type of criminal, and that's who I talked about on Wednesday. If you're a big ass business like Bank of America, like Bank of America, I did a video Wednesday, short recap. Bank of America had to pay like $250 million in a settlement for they open accounts in people's names because the bank tellers, they get bonuses when accounts are opening. So Bank of America was unauthorized, had no authorization to open accounts and were opening accounts. They weren't giving people their points for their credit card rewards that they should have gotten. And they were charging people for insufficient fund fees 2 or 3 times. Now, you think anything will ever happen to Bank of America? Nah, nothing's gonna happen to Bank of America because if they paid $250 million to settle those claims, they probably made 3 or 4 times that in profits because it's built in. It's the same way with, I used to do a lot of litigation. Yep. Wells Fargo is another one. And for the love of me, I never understand why people go to brick and mortar financial institutions unless you're like 72 and you just don't know how to download an app like my father or something like that. But brick and mortar institutions don't even give you good rates. Bank of America, they probably pay on 1%, if that, on a savings account when you can go online to an online bank and get 4.5%. I mean, you're getting the interest rate at online banks that's almost the equivalent of what people are getting who invested in government bonds, which is something I would never invest in because it just doesn't make a sense. But that's a whole nother story. But a lot of times when corporations commit those type of frauds, it's 2 reasons that they aren't going to jail. The main reason is, reason number 1 is it's actually hard to find criminal intent. Just because conduct is pervasive, it doesn't mean that you can necessarily make a burden or prove a case for intent. Now, I think in the Bank of America case, it was so pervasive, I think you can clearly prove intent. But a lot of times for intent, they like to see, or prosecutors like to see, a smoking gun where someone and upper management, I'm talking about a C-suite executive, is like, yo, hey, I'm giving out bonuses to everybody who opened bogus accounts. They want to see something plain Jane. They want it to be gift wrap. But the main reason you'll never see any criminal charges come is because pleading guilty to certain criminal charges to an organization could cause the organization to lose access to some government monies that they may have that are actually doing a lot of help in the community. And places like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, they just serve so many people in so many areas. To actually shut them down would probably be more of a financial detriment to the economy than leaving them open and letting them continue to operate. And you see that a lot in the healthcare arena. You'll see a doctor who was billing Medicaid more than he should, or a doctor who was, think about it. When you go to the dentist to get your teeth fixed, right? This is a typical scam. Dentists and mechanics are the worst because they go in your mouth under the hood of your car. You have no idea or clue what the hell they're doing. You just assume that they're doing the right thing. But this is that same scenario when you're looking at healthcare provider fraud. You have a doctor. I go to the doctor because I need to get a root canal. When you get a root canal, it's three things that are done. Okay, you have to have an extraction. You got to get some gas so it don't hurt, and then you got to get a mold and another two. So you got 3 or 4 steps that are done, right? So I go to Dr. Giggles. I need to get my root canal. Root canals are billed under Procedure Code A. Procedure Code A bills Medicaid one fee for all 4 steps that need to be done in a root canal. But what does the doctor do? And a lot of times the doctor do it by mistake. The doctor would say, okay, I just did these 4 procedures. Instead of billing it under Procedure Code A, he'll bill it each thing individually. I did an extraction, I did a cleaning, I did a mold, I did a cap. So he bills for these 4 things individually, even though he should have built them all under that one procedure code. Well, what happens? He gets paid for all 4 of those things, which is way more than what he would have gotten had he built it under the right procedure code A that included all of those 4 things. So a lot of times it starts out as a mistake. A guy makes a billing error. It may be a new doctor who's not really sure how the procedure codes work. When they submit that payment and like, damn, I got paid 2 times the amount I actually should have gotten. You know what? I think I'm going to do this more often. And that's called unbundling. They are supposed to bundle all 4 of those things under this one billing code, but they unbundled it to get more. You see that so much. And these doctors, they probably making $500,000 a year, but they run up $2, $3, $4, $5 million in Medicaid, Medicare, insurance fraud for unbundling all of these services. But if it's a doctor in a place like DC, he's probably going to get shut down. You know why? Because you could throw a rock and hit a dentist in DC. Everywhere you go is a Happy Smiles, dental cavities, kitty cavities. There's always some damn dentist everywhere. They like churches in DC. You see them on every corner. But if it's a doctor in a rural area and he's the only doctor or dentist in a 60-mile radius who serves solely that community, they're probably not going to give this guy criminal charges. They're going to work out some civil settlement where he'll cut a check. They'll sweep it under the rug, because if they close that doctor down, you're going to have people in a 100-mile radius who aren't going to have a practitioner to go to, won't have a dialysis center to go to. So that's the reason why you don't see a lot of criminal convictions when it comes to the corporations. One, because they have such a thumbprint on the community, it may be a detriment to shut them down. 2, they got a bag so they can pay that settlement. And 3, those profits are already built in. So you see it. You see that with the banks. You see it with doctors. And the last place you see it is with pharmaceutical companies. A lot of time, pharmaceutical companies, their finesse is kind of the same. As they'll do off-label marketing. Hey, the Federal Drug Administration approved this drug for sleep apnea. But doctors researched and they found out this sleep apnea drug is also good for growing hair and making you have stamina like a bull in the bedroom. So what do? The doctors or the pharmaceutical companies start marketing that drug for something off-label that it wasn't approved for. And that's called off-label marketing. And what happens? They do that. That's a crime. But they made so much money selling that sleep apnea drug to grow hair and so people can have fun in the bedroom. When they pay $100, $200 million settlements, they made 3 or 4 times that. And so that's kind of how the games go. So if you a person and you are committing fraud, you are not going to get one of those cool settlements where you pay some money back and everything goes away and you can operate. You're going to get one of those agreements to where you got to go sit down, get your toothbrush, and 3 hots in the cot is what they say, or what the phrase is. That's kind of the separation and distinction between a person who's committing fraud versus an institution, a corporation who's committing fraud. And let me just go through these few comments here before I get out of here. Bank of America didn't learn from, they don't care. You know what Bank of America learned? They probably talked to somebody at Wells Fargo and they say, oh man, that settlement we paid $300 million, but we pulled in $1.2 billion overcharging people for insufficient fund fees. So, it's all gamesmanship. It's all about profit. Yeah, I don't bank with those big banks, Dr. Sev. Y'all make sure y'all check out our channel too. Good channel on the finance side. Yes, I don't bank with those big banks. I read a study that these banks know that they will not be shut down, which is why they keep doing this. Hey, that's exactly the reason why. And then the other thing on the individual side, when you start getting into the millions of dollars of fraud, it's inevitable that someone is going to look at it. I had a colleague of mine, and I did a video years ago, but I had a colleague of mine, and she was extremely smart. I would see her in the courthouse all the time when I was a young buck attorney and I had questions. I couldn't let my clients know that I had questions or didn't know something. So I'd be like, hey, real quick, I got to take care of something. I'll be back. I go find somebody, be like, yo, this is the situation I got. This sister was really sharp and really smart and was actually a great litigator. I'm not, part of it is I'm a little bit arrogant in my craft. So I'm not really impressed by a lot of litigators, but she was one of the few who I looked at and I was like, yeah, she knows what she's doing in a courtroom. And she had resources. She was an attorney. She had a practice that appeared to be thriving. She had some business ventures. I think she owned a club or something to that effect. And what happened? Credit card fraud, opening bogus accounts, all of this stuff. Boy, buying houses, buying condos up north, buying cars. I mean, it was extreme credit card fraud. But when did her radar get hit, or when did she hit the radar of the feds? When she got millions of dollars in PPP money. That immediately raised the flag, so to speak. Because, and I told y'all this before, as a prosecutor, there are certain crimes, if you defraud it, it's not even worth my time to look at. Because if I'm investigating it, just think about it. To investigate one case, at a minimum, this is at a minimum. I'm not talking about some cases when they're big enough, they may be a whole task force where you got DEA, FBI, Secret Service, 5 or 6 alphabet agencies, all with attorneys, auditors, investigators, scientists to find out what's going on, to throw your you-know-what in jail or in prison. But let's take those bigger cases out of it. If it's a smaller case, at a minimum, you're going to have 2 special agents, maybe an auditor, probably an attorney, and depending on what the case is, you may have a specialist. If it's fraud related to something in the science areas with a government program through NASA or the National Science Foundation or something like that, you may have a scientist on the team. Those 5 people looking at that one case, all probably, if they're experienced, all make over $140,000 a year. So you're talking about an investigation that can take 1 or 2 years potentially, because the statute of limitations in general, some exceptions, 5 years for federal crimes. So you're talking about allocating 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, almost $1 million in salary over a 2 year period. You talk about almost $1 million in salary over a 2 year period to investigate someone who stole $30,000 or $50,000. Nah, that's not happening. So one of the factors that they're gonna look at is the amount of fraud and who committed the fraud. So if someone who isn't a known person committed $30,000 of fraud, if it's readily obvious and it's easy, they'll do it because there's no investigative work. But if it requires a lot of investigative resources, um, sometimes those charges won't come up, or sometimes they'll put the lien on them to make them take that plea, because it's just the wheels of justice got to keep turning, and to keep those wheels turning, you got to be able to get people through the system. You got to get people through the systems. You got to get cases through the system. You don't want to hold on to a stale case. Something takes priority. Now, that doesn't mean that I've prosecuted people for federal crimes who stole $1,500. You still got to do those small cases and those small investigations to keep folks honest. But generally, the return on investment, the ROI for looking at something like that isn't going to be high. So unless it's something that's easy, this gift wrap, like old boy putting the damn Amazon packages in his car, oh yeah, we could do that. That's not going to take a lot of bandwidth to do. But I don't know. It's kind of wild that that people are still trying to find these dumbass ways to commit crimes. Yes, I don't bank with those big banks. Yep, I already got that one. And I just want to make sure I get this last comment. Got it. Still 20K in the shadow. Nah, that used to be the running joke. Like the running joke used to be like, yo, if you're gonna commit fraud, do it for this amount or less because it won't work. But hey, I'm gonna give you some game though too, because like I said, I've investigated and had cases successfully prosecuted for $5,000, $1,500, $3,000. It just depends on the facts and circumstances. Now, just because, think about it. If a doctor, let's say a doctor was unbundling and I catch them on my radar, I'm like, okay, this doctor's on my radar. And they do the same thing in street crimes. And I'm gonna show the analogy because I didn't always do white collar stuff. You gotta represent the goon squad to get your feet wet and learn how this game works. But let's say this doctor is unbundling, fraudulently billing Medicaid, Medicare, or whatever he's doing, but he's only doing it $25,000. Well, the statute of limitations is 5 years. So if I see him do it year one, and I just know I got this data point, and he doing it year two, I could just wait and stack up. You know what? I got 5 years. I'm gonna go ahead and let these stack up. So here comes year four. Year four, you did $25,000 of fraud every year. Now you have $100,000 worth of fraud. Because you did it every year, I can throw in a conspiracy charge. A conspiracy charge can extend the statute of limitations past the normal 5 years. Every time that money transferred from one institution to the next, that's a wire fraud charge. You fraudulently billed Medicaid and you had a contract with probably Health and Human Services for that contract. So since that breach of contract, that's a false statement or claim that you made with the government. It's just so many ways you can hit them up. And they do those same things for street crime. So that was a running joke, but it doesn't work because a lot of times law enforcement, they know that criminals are out there. You don't think law enforcement knows that some drug dealer is on the corner and he's slowly making progress in the drug game? Yeah, they know that, but sometimes they just, hey, it's not worth our while to look at it right now. Or you see it a lot of times with possession charges. And this is a thing that is done a lot with possession of substance abuse. Criminals try to think they were finessing the system. X amount, if I have this amount, this is a felony. So what I'll do is I'll transport less than this amount. So if I get caught, I won't get a trafficking charge. I'll get a possession charge. And you know what happened? Law enforcement sits back and they watch and they know that, okay, he made a trip on December 5th. He made a trip on December 15th. He made a trip on December 24th, the day before Christmas, because he had to get home to his baby mother. And he made a trip down to Miami on New Year's to celebrate. Each trip had an amount that wouldn't suffice to be trafficking, so it wouldn't rise to a trafficking charge. But combined, they all rise to a trafficking charge. So we're going to combine all of those and throw the book at your ass. So in theory, some people think that, oh, well, if you do it for a smaller amount, but those statute of limitations, those conspiracy charges, they let you extend things to a point where you can I can tack on the loss amount. I can tack on the possession of the amount of an illegal substance that a person had. You had this amount on this day, this amount on this day, this amount on this day. All of these days all together combined to this amount, which means you Nino Brown out here in these streets. And you know what we're going to do to Nino Brown? We're going to throw the damn book at him. So, that's kind of how it goes. I wanted to just give y'all the brief, hey, keep an eye out. People are always out there trying to finesse. Your banks are doing it. YouTubers are doing it. Churches are doing it. It's just a cold game out here in these streets. Always do your due diligence. Do your research. If you got a question about something, literally just the best thing to do is Better Business Bureau, Google, and your state attorney's general's office, because your state attorney's general's office has a section that's solely designed to protect the interests of the public. So if there's a company out there who people have been doing business with who's a bad actor, a lot of times they'll have a printout. We don't recommend doing business with these vendors because these vendors have been known to finesse people out here in these streets. But those are the resources that you should use. Yo, I appreciate everybody who tuned in, who left a comment. And if you like this video, check out the next video that's going to pop up on the screen, because there's going to be more content related to finance. And next week, I'm going to drop a video that's going to be interesting, because I haven't done this in a while, but we're going to take a look at one of my investment portfolios to just see how it's doing for the year. I'm telling y'all right now, don't let people tell y'all can't win in a down economy, because the economy is down okay, the economy is down, but my portfolio isn't. Is that like a 16% return on the year? So I'm going to take a look. We're going to peel back the onion, look at a portfolio real quick, look at some of the interest, and I'm going to talk to y'all about what I got invested in, what I'm looking at, what I'm invested in, and how I'm able to get a return of over 15% so far this year in a market that everybody think is down, but is not down for the people who know how to move. Yo, y'all take care. Be blessed. Have a good one. Peace.